we talked with some Tennessee coaches last week and some players as well. One of the more interesting media availabilities I thought was Levorn Harbin, a guy that obviously we've heard a lot about. New outside linebackers coach, had been serving as senior defensive analyst for the first few years of the Josh Heupel era. Before that, helping mostly with the defensive line. So not a huge role change for him. He's essentially outside linebackers coach. Let's call it. It's basically the Leo's coach. Yeah. So it's kind of part of the defensive line. So not a big difference there for him. But because he's a full-time position coach now, he gets to talk to the media. And I thought very interesting session with him. Weren't a lot of media around that day. Everybody was at basketball, and so only about 7 or 8 of us, and we got to ask a lot of questions. And one of the things that came up was Jordan Ross, a 5-star second-year player that I think a lot of people are eager to see with James Pierce gone. Does he step into a bigger role this year? And I thought, we get a lot of coach speak. We get a lot of, let's face it, some vague, got to work on consistency, that kind of thing. We got some kind of unvarnished feedback, I thought, on Jordan Ross, and basically the message from Levorn Harbin was he's really got to work. He's got to improve the way he's working. He's got to improve his approach, and I thought that was a pretty direct challenge publicly to a guy that's in his second year in the program, probably expecting to play. We'll get into the depth chart at that position in a few minutes here, but Ollie, what did you make of those comments? And should Tennessee fans be at all concerned that a former 5-star who was the star of Tennessee's 2024 class is getting that kind of feedback going into his second year in the program?
I mean, it raises the concern levels for sure, but I think a lot of people need the backstory. Coach Chop is very serious, intensity through the roof. I mean, he really cares about the team. He cares about the players, cares about the product. For some guys, you come in with that 5-star title, it gets a little difficult to realize that you're not at the top of your game still.
Right.
There's still a lot more for you to learn out there. I see it a lot with a lot of 5-star guys. You think you got everything. But then you get there and you realize, well, no, this isn't, I'm not ready for this yet. And I think, it's one thing, I'm sure they've had conversations with him personally about challenging him, making him, but I mean, sometimes it does take that public statement to just really kind of focus it in for that guy, like, I need to step up to where I'm expected to be. When you get that 5-star, it's a blessing, but it's also somewhat of a curse because it layers expectations on you before you even step into the building. And so he's had a lot of expectations on him to be the player that everyone said he was going to be in high school. And, to be just fairly honest, sometimes that talent just doesn't relate into the college level. Yeah. I mean, the high school game's 100% different than what the college game is, and the college game's 100% different from what the pro game is. Yeah. And so, I mean, sometimes it takes more than that 1 year to really get that full adjustment period. I wouldn't say be super, super concerned to where you're freaking out on if this was a bust or not, because by any means I do not think that Jordan Ross is going to be a bust. But
too early for that. Anyway.
Exactly. But at the same time, sometimes it just takes some guys, even highly touted guys, it takes them a couple of years to really fully immerse themselves into the program, into the process, what they're doing, and then to start adding in, well, now I've got it all. Now I can start adding on to my talent from there. Sometimes people's learning capabilities and speed changes. Everybody's different. So I think it'll just take a little bit more time for him to truly absorb everything that's coming in and then be able to start adding on to stuff.
And I think it's a reminder, too, that Jordan Ross did just get on campus in late May last year. Yeah. He's not an early enrollee entering his second full year in the program. He's been here 10 months or so. So big difference from those guys. As you know, that first spring probably pretty rewarding to get to go through that and settle in. He didn't really get that. He had to go kind of learn on the fly in the summer and get ready for a season. But he did start off last season pretty well. Had that blocked punt return for a touchdown in the Chattanooga game to start the year. Had another tackle, I think a tackle for loss in the NC State game. But those last 10 games, or last 9 games I think he played, no stats at all. Yeah. So he's a guy that clearly still has a lot to prove, and I think a good reminder. For one, maybe kind of interesting that a guy like Levorn Harbin, he's not used to dealing with media. Yeah. Was that a little too blunt? Did he come out a little bit too forcefully? But either way, a lot of times those messages very intentional, and I think in this case, a clear message that, hey, if you want to be on the field, Jordan Ross, and they clearly could use a guy like him to step forward this year, you're going to have to really put in some work and get there because you have not arrived yet. And that's, I think, good for fans to at least know that those expectations, at least for now, maybe should be tempered a bit as far as what he can contribute this year at that position. You've got Josh Josephs, you've got Caleb Herring, some guys who've been in the program multiple years. They're probably ahead of him right now, realistically.